So we'll start here lying on our back. Let's take a deep breath in. Open the mouth, let it go. Turn your palms upward. Bring your hands out a little wider. Bring your feet to the edges of your mat. So notice that difference. A lot of times we're so used to holding our bodies in a certain position. So let your yoga mat be a space that you can really feel that you can open up and let go. And that's the beauty of being in this hot room as well, is that it helps to soften the muscles, soften the joints. It also adds that added element of discomfort. So it kind of helps you push a little more with your willpower, your mental strength and focus. So as we're here in this first posture, remind yourself that you are here to take care of your body. When we get into postures that may feel too tight or uncomfortable, remind yourself we're here to take care of the body. Don't be too concerned about having to push too hard. Think more about deeper inside the system. So deeper inside the hip joints, deeper inside the muscles, but also deeper inside the thoughts. And remind yourself why you're doing it as you're doing it. I also need you to be aware of other parts of the body. Today we're focusing on glutes, hips, hip flexor. So a lot of tension can be held there. Be aware we're not pushing, we're not forcing. We want to start to let the central nervous system know that as we move into these different angles, you're safe. The body doesn't have to resist or protect or pull back. So this requires that ease of mental thought and ease of breath. You'll know that when you get stressed out, your breath becomes short and quick, and that will decrease the oxygen that comes into the body, and it will increase the anxiety response. So continue to make the breath really slow, really long as we move through the practice. So we've got a strap next to us, or if you don't have it next to you, grab it and just have it next to you. Wait, we're gonna have you move because you're in quarters here. Get here. So just have your strap next to you, and we're lying on it. Bring the right leg up to the ceiling. Bring the hands behind the right leg, and notice here, let the head relax. So sometimes when we pull the leg up, it will start to pull because there's fascial lines in the body. It's the same fascia that goes from the heel to the back of the head. So if the hamstring is really tight and you do this, then you might start to feel a pulling at the back of the neck. That's why. So we're just gonna stay here, push out of the heel, point the toes. Push out of the heel, and point the toes. So just do a few more. Now start to move the bottom of the foot by spreading the toes more and squeezing them. So we're getting movement between the toes. And then let's make circles. Go clockwise to start, go slow. Now imagine that right ankle is creating fluid with this motion. And let's go the other way really slow. They say motion is the lotion. So as we move, we are creating that heat and that fluid there, and it's healing the ankle. And let's come back to neutral and release, switch legs. So right leg is long, hands behind the left hamstring, and we're pointing and flexing here. Try not to do it just to get it done. What we're trying to do here is open up the calf, open up the shin, and open up the ligaments around the ankle. Let's go circle, really slow. And you'll notice that one angle might be tighter than the other. Just be aware of those angles. And the other way. Try not to rush, go slow. Spread the toes, squeeze the toes. And holding to center. Bend both knees into the chest, hands behind the knees, rolling front to back a few times. And coming back onto the back, bring the arms out to a T. You can bend at the elbows, let the knees fall to the left. Now notice here, left hand to the outer right knee, and just slightly put some pressure there to bring the knee closer towards the floor. So the hip flexors are 4 muscles. You've got the psoas muscle that goes deep from the front of your lumbar vertebrae to the front of your femur, so the long bone of the upper leg. And then we've got the vastus medialis that crosses your knee and up into your front hip. So it's one of your quad muscles. Then we have the tensor fascia lata, it's called. So it's right on the outer angle of the hip to the outer angle of the knee. And then we have the adductor. So it's the inner thigh. Let's come through center. We're gonna work through those muscles. Pull your knees into your chest, forehead to the knees, lengthen your low back, and then moving to the other side. And this is helpful for opening up the lower back and opening up that TFL, they call it the tensor fascia lata. We're just gonna stay here and breathe. So right hand to the outside of the left knee, just to help guide it down. Now, this might be pretty intense for the back. Don't force it. Use the long exhale to release and relax. Think about pulling your left hip to the front wall. It's not going to be a movement that I can see, but it's going to help to lengthen the lower back muscles. And let's come back through center, pull the knees into the chest, just to lengthen the lower back. Plant the feet to the mat and widen the knees. So now we've got the knees to the edges of the room and the bottoms of the feet together. Hands to your belly. And we're just allowing gravity to open up the inner thigh. So now we're accessing the adductor muscle. Just stay here and breathe. Now you'll notice here, if the adductors are tight, this will start to pull your low back off your mat. Just notice that. And then see if you can gently draw your low back down. So it's like a pelvic tilt, pushing the low back to the mat. And then release the low back and let the tailbone roll towards the floor. So we're lifting the low back off the mat. And then drawing it back down. So it's a very small movement, but now we're activating the lower back muscles and the deep lower abdominal muscles. Now notice here, if you can allow more softness into the adductor muscles, so those inner thighs. We're just trying to be aware of these subtle movements that happen with ease or with tension. Now, I mentioned this last week. Some of us, it's going to be an easy posture. Some of us, it will be a difficult posture. I need you to be aware of what works best for you. Just a couple more pelvic tilts. Draw it in, lift it up. Now, the next time it comes to a neutral position, we'll release the knees back to the ceiling, planting the feet. Take your strap. Lift the right leg straight up to the ceiling and take the strap to the bottom of the right foot. Taking both straps to the left hand, bring the right thumb to the front of your right hip crease. Straighten your left arm. Don't pull with your elbow. Just draw your right hip to the front wall. So you're using that right thumb to draw the right hip towards the front wall. It's a very small, minute movement. And then the right leg goes to the left. Don't let the hip fall off the mat. You're pushing it down and forward to the front of the room. So accessing that TFL. Maybe some of us will feel it in the outer knee. Check in with your shoulders, especially that right one. A lot of times we'll start to tense other areas of the body when we move one area. This is what we're trying to focus on releasing. So patterns we hold will continue to happen in different shapes. So sometimes if we activate one part of the body, another part will be activated. Notice that and see if you can just work from the one part you're moving. Let's come back through center. Take the strap to the right hand. Bring the left hand to the front of your left hip and lengthen the left leg on the mat. And now we're bringing the right leg over to the right. So now we're accessing that inner thigh. And notice if it hovers over the floor, you can take your block underneath your right thigh to support it if you need. Here we're using the arm is straight. We're not pulling with the elbow because I don't want you to use muscular effort here. Now try to relax the low back. Notice if that left hip is starting to lift, you're just using your left palm to guide it down and keep breathing. Now notice the breath needs to be slow so that the brain knows you're safe and comfortable. Keep breathing. Coming back up through center. Remove the strap, plant the foot. Left leg to the ceiling. Take the strap to the bottom of the left foot. Now we've got the straps into the right hand. The left thumb goes to the front of the left hip crease and then draw the hip towards the front wall. Push the low left back down and then start to bring your right leg towards left leg towards the right. And just notice, some of us it's going to want to pop up to the shoulder, some of us it's going to pop off of the mat. Be aware of that, stop it before it happens, and move within that range of space. Keep breathing. Get comfortable with allowing the breath to be full, even though you're really concentrating, maybe there's a lot of effort, still be calm with your breath. Check in with the shoulders, left one, the back of the neck. Try to make the breath deeper. And bring the leg back up through center. Take the strap into the left hand, right hand to the front of the right hip, and then right leg on the mat. So you're using the right palm to help draw it towards the floor, and the left leg goes out to the left. Straighten the arm if you can, and again, you can take your block underneath your left thigh to the side of you, just to help support it if it needs it. And then notice if that right hip wants to pop up. If the inner thigh is tight, that's what's going to happen. So just come up slightly instead and keep your right hip down. Keep breathing. Try not to have so much effort that the breath shortens or tightens. Check in with the expression on the face. Bring a gentle smile to the mouth. With the next breath in, left leg up. And exhale, release the strap. Bend both knees to the chest. Hands behind the knees, rolling front to back. 3, 2, hold here. Ground your feet and come up to stand. So take your time as you move to a standing position. You can, if your hands don't naturally comfortably reach the floor, take your block and you can just place your fingertips on your block. Now step your feet as wide as your mat, turn your toes out, bend the knees wide. So knees bend, 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 bend all the way down, and then hips up. So move through this action, straightening and flexing through the knees. Just keep moving. Control your breath. Now, as you're doing this, be aware of how the body feels. Some of us will feel it in the lower back. Some of us will feel it in the ankles, maybe in the knees. Be aware of that. Just a couple more. The next time that the hips are up, we'll keep them up. Walk the feet back together and move the block out of the way. Step your left foot forward, your right foot back, and come down to your right knee. Straighten the left leg. Pull the hip forward, and we're just moving forward and back here. Control your breath. 5, and back. 4. Now as we're going forward, try to get that front right hip to touch the mat. It's not going to, but just guide it there. 3, 2. Now the next one, we're gonna hold it forward and draw the right hip forward. We're gonna take the block right in front of the knee and then draw it back, lift the knee, and we're placing the block just above the knee. So on your thigh, above the knee. On your thigh, above the knee. Yeah, and you're leaning forward, forward, forward. And now we're gonna stay here and breathe. See if you can close the eyes. This is a perfect opportunity to really focus on the breath. How does that right hip feel? Every time you exhale, try to get it further towards the mat. Tuck the right toes, lift the knee off the block, drop the knee down to where it was. To take the block now, lift your left foot, block under the left foot. And do it again, sink forward. Just changes the angle of the stretch. Left foot right on the block. Whoa. Got it? Okay. Whoa. Get your knee over your ankle. That's gonna help stabilize. Yeah, your block might be too far from you. And see if you can draw your right hip out. Yeah, you know what? If you don't need it, don't use it. If it's enough of a stretch without, then just take the block out. And just breathe. See if you can take your left arm to the outside of your left knee. Yep, and use that to help draw it in center. Yeah, keep breathing. Make sure the breath isn't short. Let's breathe together. Everyone exhale. Inhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 5, 4, 3, 2. Be comfortable with that rate of breath. And release, so draw the hips back. Take the block out, come to table. And we're just grounding the hands, drop the belly, lift the chin, and exhale, round. Just keep moving forward and back. Really open up through the back of the neck. Point the tailbone right in between your knees. 5, 4, 3. Really imagine the bones of your spine moving. Last 1. Hold to neutral. Bring the right foot forward between the hands. If it doesn't come up in one step, that's normal, no big deal. Just pick it up and move it. Tuck the left toes, drag the left knee back so we're open through that left front thigh, and we're going back and forth with the hips. When you go back, point the toes to the ceiling and spread them. So remember that fascial line I was talking about earlier? The bottom of your foot directly correlates with the glute. So be aware as we're stretching the foot, we're also stretching the area of the hip. Just a couple more here. Be aware, maybe one side feels different than the other. Now we're gonna hold forward with that right knee. Take the block right in front of your left thigh, and we're trying to flatten the top of the left thigh to the block. And we're holding. Just allow the top of the left foot to be relaxed. Try to sink further down with that left hip. And now check in with that right knee. Try to keep it centered. So use the inner right bicep to help draw the knee in. And if the body feels it's stressed, it's going to resist and tighten. Be aware of that. Keep using your exhale like it's coming out of the left hip. Notice your glute. Notice if you're tightening there. And come back. Take the block out and we're moving it underneath the right foot. You may need to change your stance or the distance between your foot and your knee. Use that. And we're gonna stay here and hold. Longer exhale. Release, draw the hips back, take the block out. We're coming right on to the belly. Just make a pillow with your hands. Let your toes turn inward, your heels turn outward. You're just gonna stay here and breathe. Soften your lower back, breathe into your lower back. So I'm just bringing some balls by your mat. So when you're ready, come up, move to table, and then tuck the toes and moving into downward dog. Take your ball, walk your hands back, take the ball to the underside of the right foot. So hands right back to them, yep. Come to stand. So we're just gonna stay here, take the ball, roll it forward and back underneath the foot. Try to push down into the ball so you're getting movement into the bones of the foot. And then start to go side to side, finding the edges of the foot. Across the bones of the toes. And then again, forward and back, get the arch of the foot, the inner edge of the arch. It's very similar to foam rolling for the foot. And we'll come back to neutral, release, and just moving to the left foot. So the more you push down, the more tension will be on the foot. And already here, I notice one side's different than the other. Be aware of that. Maybe there's an angle that feels really good to push on, so you can stay there. Feeling the outer edges of the foot and underneath the knuckles of the toes. Find the edges of the foot, the edges of the arch. To neutral, take the ball, widen your feet and come back to that squat. Now we're just gonna take the ball, place it somewhere where it's not gonna roll around. I've got it on my strap. And then we're just going left to right. Again, if you need the block underneath your hands, try to get the hips low. We're trying to get the heels and the toes really high. When you go side to side, pull the knees back so we're getting an outward rotation of the hip and we're accessing that adductor muscle. as well as the calves and the feet. And then we'll hold to neutral. Lift the hips, walk your toe, or point your toes forward and walk your hands forward. Step back into your regular downward dog and step your right foot between your hands. Left knee comes down and lengthen the spine. You may need your block, so I'll have you take your block to the left side. Sorry, right side. Bring the left arm up, palm faces the right wall. So already here, this might be enough for you. This is gonna access that hip flexor and the psoas in the front and the TFL, and start to lean to the right. Now as you're going, try not to let your hip pop up. Pull the left hip forward. Notice that right knee, try not to let it flare. Keep it in line with the hip and keep pulling the left shoulder back, left hip drawing towards the floor. Keep breathing. See if you can sink further down. Try to let go of tensing that right glute, yeah. Deeper breath. And we'll come up, release the hand, pull your hips back, release the right foot, knees together, left foot forward. Block to the outside of the left hip. Left hand is on the block. Come into that long squat, or sorry, long lunge, right arm up, palm faces the left wall, and then side bend to the left. And right hip draws forward. And also here, be aware what's going on. Left foot plants, plant the left foot. Keep the knee in line with the hip and the ankle. Push your hip forward. Draw your shoulder back. Yes, try to maintain open collarbones while you're here. Keep breathing. See if you can let go of tensing that left glute. Maybe that right hamstring can soften a bit more. Get the right hip a little bit closer to the floor. And hand comes down, release. And just moving the block out of the way. We're coming back to that table pose and we're moving right shoulder towards right hip. Back to neutral. And left shoulder, left hip. Back to neutral. Try not to shift the hips too much. Keep the hips neutral and we're moving. So look at me for a second. I don't want to see too much of this. Keep the body straight and we're trying to just squeeze hip and armpit together. Good, keep moving. So it's a small movement. Pull the belly away from the floor. Remember, we're keeping our collarbones wide here. Try not to let the head hang. Just a couple more on each side. And we'll come back to neutral after we finish the left. Shift the feet to the left, take your ball. We're gonna come right onto the right hip. The legs are long towards the front of the room. This might be a little intense. If it's too much, just move the ball. So we're gonna get it right underneath the right outer hip. You're on your right forearm. The left foot is planted, the left knee is pointing to the ceiling. We're using the left foot and the right elbows to support us. And we're just rocking forward and back with that right hip. So we're rolling the TFL on the ball. So very similar to that foam rolling. Make it longer if you can, so you'll just have to adjust your right forearm so you can get down more towards the knee. Remember that TFL is from the upper hip to the lower knee. Almost done here. And then we'll stop here and come onto the back. The left knee stays bent. Take your ball. And we're gonna put it right at the upper right glute. So it'll be like right here. Left knee is bent, right leg is long on the mat. And you're using the left foot to help give you a little bit more lift off of the floor. And we're just rolling over that right glute. Keep it towards the upper outer hip. It's pretty intense. And you know, some of us might feel a different angle that really needs that. So stay there if you need to. Make sure that this feels good. It could be an intense sensation, but you can still breathe through it. This is bringing fresh blood into that area. A lot of tension in a muscle will decrease the amount of flow of blood to that area. So this is helping to bring the blood flow into that space. And see if you can go a little bit closer towards the sacrum now. Adjust the ball if you need to, adjust your position if you need to. And release. Take the ball out, take your block, come back onto your back. Take your ball, just put it back on your strap so it doesn't fall all over the place. Now we're taking the block on its flattest side, underneath the left glute. The left leg is bent, and the right leg is long. So it's almost like it's falling off of the block. Your right side is falling off of the block. So we're opening up that right hip flexor. If you're not really feeling much here, take the block to its second highest height. You're using your hands to help stabilize. The right leg is long. You can let the right leg or toes turn to the right slightly, and that will help to access the adductor as well. We're getting into that hip flexor deep into the psoas muscle here. You can allow that left knee to flare to the left as well. Just breathe. Notice if you're tensing that left hip or the right glute, let it go, let it soften like you're melting over the block. Longer breath. Plant the left foot so the knee points to the ceiling, ground it, and draw your right foot to plant. Both knees are to the ceiling, push into your feet evenly, take the block out from underneath, and just lengthen your legs on the mat. Close the eyes and just notice how the left and the right sides feel. There is definitely a difference. If you don't notice it, try to be more in tune internally. Bring your awareness into your deepest part of your right hip joint, into the joint capsule. Imagine that. And imagine the muscles surrounding that hip joint. All those ligaments there. Feeling the blood flow into that space. Bring the knees to the chest. Hands to the knees, use that to roll you up, and then we'll come on to the left side. So we're taking the ball onto the underside, just below, I should say, of the left outer hip. We're on the left forearm, the right foot is bent, planted. You can keep the foot in front or behind that left thigh, and we're just rolling forward and back over the ball. So we're trying to get the direct left side of the hip. Of the leg. And just notice if you're tensing, creating more tension than necessary. And then we'll come onto the back, take the ball out. The right knee stays bent and planted, and then we'll take the ball to the left glute, to the upper left glute right around the hip bone. Lengthen the leg on the mat. You can push the left heel into the mat so you can use that as leverage as well. And then rolling around the upper outer left glute. It feels so good. No? Like there's some areas like, oh my gosh. Just a couple more here. And then start to move towards the sacrum. So if you need to adjust the ball, we're getting closer towards the inner edge of the glute. So becoming aware of the different tensions in the body will then be able to adjust our movements as we're practicing at the gym or doing our yoga or whatever sport we choose to do. We'll start to become more mindful when we hold our bodies in these unbalanced postures. And we'll release. Take the ball, place it aside. We'll take the block, start with the flattest edge underneath the right glute or hip. The right knee is bent and the left leg is long. So you're kind of like falling off of the block. And then if you need to, take the block to the next highest point and let that left front thigh kind of roll out to the left and the right knee can roll out to the right. We're just going to stay here and breathe. Try to breathe into your lower belly. That will help to stretch open the lower abdominals. Plant the right foot, push into it to lift the hip, take the block out, and legs long on the mat, come back into your Shavasana, and we're using this posture to feel the body. Notice the difference. Close the eyes and breathe into the hips. Notice if you're holding residual tension, start to use your breath to release tension that doesn't need to be there. This is a tool that you will cultivate and hone so that you can come into ease whenever you need to. Bring your knees into your chest. Hands behind the knees. Roll forward. And if you need some water, it's a good time now.
Too heavy for that ball.
Is it squishing too much? Steve asked me if it wasn't going to be hard enough. I'll know for next time. I think also because it's so hot in here and it's making it smushy. Okay, so the right shin will remain parallel to the front of the mat. And then the left leg will be shin parallel to the side of the mat. So this is called 90-90 because each knee is at a 90-degree angle. What? Should be 35 and 90. 35, 35. So we're working towards trying to get that left hip forward and down. So you may be sliding to one side. That just means you're kind of tight here. You can take your block and place it beside you so that we're trying to keep the spine straight up. Now from here, we're just leaning forward. Don't lean forward so much that you have to lean sideways. We're gonna hold this. Check in with that left glute, let it soften. And then we come back up. And forward. Keep the spine straight and back up. So keep moving forward and back. Spine stays directly over the sacrum. We're not leaning to one side. Just a couple more. The next time we come up will be the last one. Now see if you can get your left thigh parallel to the front of the room. So draw the knee back if you can. And then bring your hands back, if you can, just if you can. And then we lean back, maybe just the right hand will come back. You can keep your left hand on your left thigh or both hands. We're just gonna stay here. Close the eyes and let your left hip sink down. Notice if you're holding tension in the glute, let it relax. Notice if you're holding tension in your chest, relax. Relax your chest. So this next one's kind of tricky. It's just to cultivate minute, small strengthening muscles. So think about lifting the outer ankle off of the floor without lifting the knee. It's a very small movement. We're trying to get the whole shin off the mat. So what we're trying to do is get that internal, I know it's not a big movement. You know what? Let's all put our hand on the inner knee and then work from there. Yeah. And we're just gonna do 5 of these. Just gonna do 5. It's even just the action is good. So let's go 4 and down, 3 and down, 2 and 1. Release it. Left leg will go long. Right foot outside of the left thigh. Wrap your arms around your shin. We're just staying here. Remember, we're relaxing.
Steve, you hold me up first.
Even just one hand is fine. Yeah, there we go, there we go. Because if I put you in a position that you're like, then your brain is gonna remember that. And then the next time you come into this kind of position throughout your day, the brain is gonna be like, oh yeah, I need to be stressed out here. That's gonna help. So I need you to come into a position just before you get into that stressful pulling and work in that space. Then work with your brain to calm it down, and then that will work with the muscles to slow that electricity kind of tension. Just a couple more breaths. And we'll release the leg. Now the left knee will go across the mat, or sorry, shin across the mat, and then the right shin across the side of the mat. The block can go on the left side of you. We're trying to keep the spine straight. You have height if you need, so use your tools. Spine is straight. If the hip is off the mat, it's not a big deal. We're just allowing that right inner thigh to relax. Moving forward and back. For some of us, it's not going to be a big movement. I don't want you to roll your chest in. We're moving strictly from the hip. So we're not rounding forward, we're moving from the hip joint. For some of us, it's not going to be a big movement. It doesn't matter. Work to your degree. 5, 4. Notice you can go a little more with each movement, even if it's not visibly noticeable. You can feel it within the body. 2 more. And the next time that we come up, we'll stay up. And then we start to lean back. First, we'll get the thighs parallel to the front of the room if possible. And then we lean back. If you want to take your block with you, you can rest your hand on your block. You can rock to the one side, to the left side. And now we're trying to get the right inner knee towards the floor. We're just staying here and breathing. Try not to contain your chest. Keep your collarbones wide so the breath is easily flowing in. Right glute relaxed. Close the eyes and breathe into that front right hip. Now we'll slightly come up, take the right hand to the top of the inner left knee, and we're trying to lift the heel up and down. Again, it's not a big movement. Push down the knee as you lift the ankle. 5 more. 3, 2, calm your breath. And we'll release the right leg long, left foot over right thigh. And then we hug the knee in. Remember, spine is tall. If it doesn't feel good to use both hands, just use one. Try to get that left hip to the floor. So notice if you're pulling so much that you're not even getting that movement in the hip anymore. The hip needs to be down to get the stretch to come into the hip. And close the eyes and breathe. Calm your breath. And release. Come to table. Bring the block under your hips, your toes point directly back. So now we're going to access, I think most of us know our quad muscles, but I'll explain it quickly. We have 4 muscles in the front of our thigh. That's why it's called a quad muscle. One of them crosses the upper hip. So sometimes you'll see, I'm a big fan of when I do leg extension, I'll lean back to access that upper muscle. So that's one of the hip flexors. Yeah, so that's it. You know, if you're good enough to stay here and you feel it, that's fine. But the more you lean back, the more you're going to access that particular quad that is a hip flexor. Now, for some of us, you might not need the block. You can sit right down. The wider the knees, the less intense. The closer the toes together, less intense. And we're just going to breathe. If you find that you took the block out and it doesn't feel good anymore, come back onto the block.
How about if you can't even, I can't even.
Take 2 blocks. 2 blocks, yeah. Yeah. Or you can flip it to the upper next level up.
Hold on the top of my foot.
Yes, so perfect example of how your ankle affects your knee, right? Yeah, definitely. So if you find that, then that's what I said last week, that one posture that we do that's really intense, that's the one you need to practice.
Let's do this one. I'm good at this one.
Yeah, this will be the one. Listen, if you practice this and you start doing your quads, like with this length, think about all much more power you'll be able to generate from the length of the leg. So the more power, the more strength, and then the bigger your muscle will grow. So yeah, this is a really good one. So we're just going to stay here and breathe. Close the eyes. And we'll come forward from here. So come to table. Take your block lengthwise and put it kind of like halfway to your mat, to the lower end of the mat. Take the top of your thigh. We did this very similar in our lunge, but we're going to come right onto the belly. So that left leg is going to be lifted off of your mat. Everyone good here? You know what, I should have told you, grab your strap. Some of us might not need it, but just in case. Now from here, we're bending that left foot, left knee.
Sorry, my ball rolled right under you.
You know, this kind of class.
Okay, so the left toes are towards the ceiling. Loop your strap to the top of your left foot. If it doesn't feel good, you don't need to do it.
How do you get around that?
If it's enough with the knee bent, just stay there. We're accessing the same muscle that we just did on our seated position. So start to come up onto the elbows, forearms, and we're taking the top of the strap to the top of the foot. And we're on our elbows.
Huh.
Try to relax. And you can come onto your forearms. Arch your back slightly. Belly down. And then do like this. With both sides. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
I'm just gonna stay here. Longer breath. Just a couple more. Make it count. Longer breath, deeper into that left front hip. Now we'll release the strap, release the foot, take the block out. Come to your right forearm is going to be parallel to the front of your mat and the right ear on the right forearm. Bend the left knee so the thigh is parallel to the front wall and the left inner thigh is into the floor. You can stay here. Think about pushing the front of your left hip down towards the floor. If you want, you can straighten the left leg directly out to the left. We're trying to keep the thigh parallel to the front of the room. If your inner thighs are really tight, you'll notice that your left hip pops up higher than your right. So see if you can just keep directing the inner thigh down. Close the eyes. Every exhale softens it more. Notice if you're holding effort in that right leg. Let it go. With the next inhale, bring the chin forward. If the leg is straight, bend the knee. Bring your hands under your shoulders. Now the left knee is out to the left wall. The hands are directly underneath your shoulders. And chin forward. Start to straighten your arms. Doesn't have to be very high. Now we're really accessing the left hip flexor. Try to keep pushing your hips down. Notice if you're tensing your lower back. If the hip flexors are tight, the low back feels it the most. I think most of us got the email yesterday. I just tried to send you a photo of how that affects the lower back. It compresses the lower vertebrae. And yeah, you don't have to straighten your arms. You can come right down onto your elbows if that's better. We're almost done here. I would need you to be in a position that is comfortable where you can breathe. You're not tensing the face. And release. Come down to the belly. Lengthen the left leg next to the right. Take the block. And then we'll come to table and the block will go underneath the top of the right thigh. Take our strap. If it's enough for you, so we're on our forearms here with the right knee bent. If it's enough for you here, so when I was talking about fascial lines, there's another fascial line that runs from the tops of your toes all the way through the upper body to the top of your head. It's the same fascial line. Now, when I say fascia, it's a connective tissue and it touches all of the muscles. So even though the muscles you think are separate, they're all together in the fascia. And use the strap if you need. And the reason why I ask you to come up onto your forearms is because you will get the whole fascial line. If it's too much, you don't need to come up, but I'd like you to come up onto your forearms if you can to open up the whole front of the body. And just keep breathing. Don't do it to the point of tension. If you need to, don't use the strap. If you need to, don't use the block. You don't even need to use the block. Now notice the right glute, let it soften. Be fully aware of that right front hip. Just a couple more breaths. And we'll release the strap. Take the block out. Left forearm parallel to the front of the mat, left ear on the forearm, right knee out to the right, thigh parallel to floor. Already here, notice if your right hip or glute lifted, push it down. And then if you want, the right leg can straighten to the right wall. And then notice, flatten the inner thigh towards the floor. Close the eyes. Feel the exhale melting that inner thigh down. If the leg is straight, bend the knee. So now the foot is towards the inner left thigh. Bring the chin forward. Bring the hands under your shoulders. And we're coming up. Again, start with your elbows first. If you found that it was too much to come up with straight arms. We're gonna stay here. And notice that right inner thigh, flatten it down, flatten it down. And if you need to, right knee falls more towards the right wall. And then maybe straight arms. If you go to the position that's too much, just come back down to the last modification, not a big deal. And this is a really good time to notice the difference from one side to the other. It's a good time to thank your body for being so resilient and strong. Think about how lucky you are to have this body, this tool, this vessel. A couple more breaths. Check in with your glutes, let them soften. And elbows bend, come down. Lengthen the right leg next to the left. Make a pillow with your hands, bring your forehead to the backs of the hands, and rock your hips left to right really quick. We're loosening up the lower back here. Left to right with your hips, yeah. And then hold here. Feel the blood flowing into the lower body. Oxygenate the blood, take longer breath, and know that as you're breathing it in, the heart is pumping that oxygen into the muscles of the legs. Bring your hands under your shoulders. Come up to table, downward dog. Walk your hands back to your toes. Take your opposite elbows, and we're using that as a weight. Let the head hang, use that as a weight, and we're trying to create space between the lower spinal joints. Head and arms hang heavy. Breathe into the lower back muscles. Try to stay present in your body. Try not to fidget. Close your eyes. Notice even here, sometimes it's hard to relax and those lower back muscles never get a chance to soften. Start focusing on letting that go. Keep hanging, crown towards floor. Release the hands. Walk them forward, come back into our downward dog. Bring the right knee to the right wrist, the left ankle to the left hip. Moving into pigeon. Walk the hands forward. controlled breath. Use your exhale. Stay fully present. Breathe like you're breathing directly out of your skin. One more breath here. Ground your hands, come up. Tuck the left toes, move into downward dog. Check in, left compared to right. The times between your postures are just as important as the postures. Stay here and notice. And let's go left side. And folding in. Notice if you're holding. We're almost done here. Just a couple more breaths. Let that left knee and hip sink further down. And we'll come up. Stay here. We're just swinging right leg over left and cross the ankles. Fingertips right down beside you. If cross-seated does not feel comfortable, take your block underneath your glutes. Right finger, or both fingertips right down beside you. Right ear to the right shoulder. Now notice if you hunched one shoulder, bring them both down. Check in with the hips. Both hips are grounded. Fingertips right down beside you, and that way you can really lengthen through the sides of the neck. And bring the chin back through center, moving with awareness over to the other side. So the muscles of the neck obviously house the cervical spine. This brings the nerves up into the brain. And they also encapsulate the arteries that bring the blood up into the brain. Come back up through center and over to the right. Just relax. So the more free we can make the muscles of the neck, the easier the blood can flow up into the brain. The easier the nervous system can do its thing into your brain. Bring it back up. Last one on the left. Draw your shoulders down. And back through center. Bring the hands to the knees. Turn your palms up. Shoulders are relaxed. Close your eyes. Now bring your breath in and up. Know that as you're breathing, you've freed up some movement in the neck and you are directing oxygen up into the brain. Direct it there. The more blood flow we have to the brain, the easier the brain can think. The nervous system can work a little bit easier when there's not a lot of pressure on the nerves. Bring your hands to your heart. Open the eyes. Namaste. And we're done. How do you feel?
Good.
Good. So, yeah, and sweaty.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get some better balls next week. You can just put them in here. And then everyone's got my email. If you didn't get my email, then come talk to me so I can give you it. And then let me know if you have any questions.